The Rockies have their own brand of justice, silent, absolute, like the depths of winter that turn these peaks into towers of crystalline judgment. I've seen what these mountains can do to the careless, the arrogant, the unfaithful. Soon enough, my wife and her mountain guide will learn that lesson firsthand. Their illicit romance is about to collide with nature's cruel indifference, and my carefully crafted plan. The rescue dispatch center hums with the usual late afternoon activity. Surveillance monitors paint the room in a ghostly glow, tracking weather patterns and marking potential hazard zones across our sector of the Colorado wilderness. I rub my eyes, fighting the fatigue from a brutal 12-hour shift. 3 major rescues today: a dislocated shoulder near Eagles Pass, a family of unprepared hikers trapped by sudden weather changes on Thunder Ridge, and a hypothermic solo climber who had no business being on the mountain. My mind drifts to darker places as I log the day's incidents. Not so long ago, I was pulling Marines from firefights in Fallujah, making split-second decisions that meant the difference between body bags and trip home. Now I save weekend warriors from their own poor choices, while my wife Sarah finds her thrills with that smooth-talking Trek guide, thinking I'm too absorbed in my work to notice their little rendezvous. Every mountain rescue mirrors my combat experience in ways civilians could never understand. The same knife-edge decisions, the identical surge of adrenaline, that familiar dance with mortality. My time in the Corps prepared me perfectly for this life. Methodical equipment checks, rapid risk assessment, the cold calculus of survival. Up here, like in war, nature doesn't grant second chances. Neither do I. Connor. Mike's voice slices through my brooding. I glance up to see the dispatch screen blinking with a new notification. Sarah's latest trek request glows on the monitor. A 3-day expedition through some of our most challenging terrain. The formal language of her email barely masks its true purpose. Every word drips with deception, each carefully chosen phrase a fresh betrayal. The timestamp pulls me back to 3 years ago, when these same peaks played matchmaker. Fresh from the corpse, still carrying the weight of too many combat decisions, I found Sarah completing her guide certification. She claimed my quiet intensity drew her in, that she saw something precious beneath the warrior's shell. I fell for the promise in her smile, the illusion of peace after years of chaos. Fool's gold, as it turned out. Mike hovers by my station, discomfort radiating from his stocky frame. Look about Sarah. His words come slow, measured, like a man crossing thin ice. Spotted her at Summit Cafe yesterday. The cafe. Our old lunch spot when shifts aligned, before she found more exciting company. She wasn't alone, Mike continues, studying my face for any reaction. That new guide, Jack Reynolds? They weren't exactly discussing trail conditions. I maintain my neutral expression, another gift from my military days. Inside, something cold and calculating clicks into place, like the final tumbler in a lock. How long have you known? My voice sounds casual, almost disinterested. Mike shifts his weight, guilt written across his features. Couple weeks. Wanted to tell you sooner, but he trails off, eyeing my clenched fists. Listen, Connor, I know you're not the type to make scenes, but maybe you should confront them. Clear the air. And then what? A bitter smile crosses my face. Challenge him to a duel. Create workplace drama. No, Mike. The mountains have their own way of handling these situations. I stand, walking to the observation window. Outside, snow falls in thick curtains, blanketing the slopes in fresh powder. Somewhere out there, a group of 6 people will soon embark on a trek. 2 reckless lovers and 4 unsuspecting tourists, none of them aware that their routine adventure might be their last. My mind catalogs all the bodies we've recovered over the years. Climbers who slipped on icy ledges, hikers caught in sudden storms, adventurers who disappeared into countless hidden crevices. These mountains know how to keep secrets. They also know how to punish those who lose respect for their power. Mike, I turn back to my friend. I need information. Complete details. Their route, group composition, weather forecasts. Every dangerous section along their path. And especially, I pause for effect, areas where radio communication might be unreliable. Connor, he shakes his head, understanding dawning in his eyes. Don't do anything stupid, okay? If something happens, I smile that special smile my Marine unit used to call the Reaper's Grin. It'll be just another mountain accident. You know how many we get each season, especially when guides get distracted. I pull up the topographical map on my screen, studying their planned route. The trail snakes between towering peaks like a serpent poised to strike. 3 days of trekking, 2 major passes, dozens of potential hazard zones, ice-slit ridges, narrow ledges, deep crevices. I know every treacherous inch of this terrain, every deadly secret these slopes harbor. I know exactly where a path becomes particularly treacherous, where rock slides occur most frequently, where the snowpack might give way under human weight. Interesting road choice, I mutter, loud enough for Mike to hear. Risky for this time of year. Most experienced guides avoid the second pass entirely during these conditions. Maybe we should alert management, Mike suggests carefully. Why bother? I shrug, letting contempt seep into my voice. Jack Reynolds is a certified guide, isn't he? Must know what he's doing. Though, I pause, watching Mike's reaction. They say to love clouds even the sharpest judgment. That evening, I return to our apartment. The space greets me with the aroma of fresh coffee and soft jazz. Sarah's packing music. She's in the bedroom, methodically filling her backpack, so absorbed in her task she doesn't notice my arrival. Or perhaps she's just gotten too comfortable with her deceptions. I lean against the doorframe, observing her movements. They're precise, professional, the mark of an experienced guide. Carabiners, ropes, safety gear, each piece of equipment finds its designated place with practiced efficiency. Only her occasionally trembling fingers betray her nervous state. Preparing for the trek, my voice makes her startle slightly, though she tries to hide it. Yes, she continues packing, carefully avoiding my gaze. New route, need to expand my experience. Of course, I move to the window, watching darkness creep over the mountains. Saw today's weather forecast. Conditions look treacherous up at the pass. Near zero visibility, strong wind gusts predicted. Nothing we can't handle. Her voice aims for casual but misses by a mile. We've got an experienced guide with us. So I heard. I study her reflection in the window glass. Jack Reynolds, they say he's quite skilled, especially at handling female clients. She freezes momentarily, and in that pause, I hear everything I need to know. Fear, guilt, and something else, perhaps relief that the charade is finally ending. Didn't know you knew him, she manages, trying to sound nonchalant, but her trembling hands betray her as she fumbles with the safety harness. Oh, I know quite a bit. I turn to face her, forcing her to meet my gaze. Like how the mountains don't forgive carelessness, and how even experienced guides sometimes lose focus, especially when their minds wander from the trail. Now she trembles visibly, slowly straightens up, still facing away from me, but I can see the tension in every muscle of her back. Connor, it's not what you. Good night, I cut her off, moving toward the door with deliberate calm, feeling cold fury crystallize inside me. Have a safe trek, and give my regards to Jack. Tell him to watch his step carefully. Mountain accidents happen so easily. I exit, closing the door with exaggerated gentleness. Behind me, I hear the clatter of dropped equipment, her shaking hands finally betraying her completely. Or perhaps that's the sound of our shattered marriage. The mountains do tend to echo such sounds of destruction. Throughout the night, I sit at the kitchen table, methodically reviewing maps and weather reports. In the bedroom, Sarah tosses and turns restlessly, probably imagining her upcoming romantic adventure in the wilderness. I wonder what occupies her thoughts. Is she dreaming of stolen touches during safety checks, or planning how they'll share a tent while the rest of the group sleeps unaware? My thoughts travel darker paths. I contemplate the treachery of mountain snow, how easily one can lose orientation in thick fog, how simple it is to take a wrong turn at a trail fork, and how rescue teams sometimes arrive too late. After all, radio communication in the mountains can be so unreliable. My military training surfaces again, transforming grief and rage into cold, tactical precision. Every detail must be perfect. Every accident must appear natural. The mountains will be my allies in this. They've had millennia of practice at making people disappear. Sarah's restless movements eventually quiet down. The apartment falls into an uneasy silence, broken only by the distant howl of wind through the peaks. Tomorrow, she'll embark on what she thinks is a simple trek. But I've learned in combat that the most effective traps are the ones the target walks into willingly. I check my watch, 6 hours until their departure. 6 hours to ensure every element of my plan is in place. The mountains are patient. They don't rush their judgment. Neither will I, after all. Revenge, like an avalanche, requires perfect timing, and I intend to make this performance flawless. Dawn breaks over the Rockies, painting the snow-covered peaks in shades of blood and gold. Through high-powered binoculars, I track 6 figures assembling at the trailhead, their forms ghost-like in the morning mist. The group matches the manifest perfectly. 2 married couples from Denver, typical corporate warriors seeking their quarterly adrenaline fix. A retired geology professor who's been climbing these slopes longer than I've been alive. And them, Jack and Sarah, standing slightly apart from the others, their body language screaming intimacy even at this distance. Group Assembly 800, Departure 8:30, I murmur, checking against their filed plan. Right on schedule. Jack conducts the safety briefing, his hands dancing through the air as he indicates points on the map. Show off. Sarah stands at his side, ostensibly assisting with the demonstration, but I catch every accidental brush of their fingers as they handle the equipment. Checking weather updates, the duty dispatcher's voice carries its usual professional tone. Connor, forecast shows severe visibility issues near the second pass tomorrow. Should we warn them? No need, I lower the binoculars. Jack's a certified guide. Surely he monitors the conditions. The sarcasm in my voice is subtle enough to pass as professional courtesy. The group begins their ascent along the marked trail. I know every inch of this first day's route, a deliberately gentle introduction to mountain trekking. Gradual elevation gain, well-maintained paths, several scenic rest stops. Perfect for building false confidence, perfect for making them lower their guard. Throughout the day, I rotate between observation points, tracking their progress. They move slower than planned, the city folks struggling with the altitude and their own overconfidence. Frequent breaks punctuate their journey. During one stop, I watch Jack break out a thermos, the group huddling around him like eager disciples as he undoubtedly regales them with tales of his mountaineering prowess. By evening, they set up camp exactly where predicted, a sheltered plateau beneath an overhanging cliff. Even from my vantage point, I can see Jack helping Sarah with her tent, their whispered conversations and lingering touches, hidden from the group's notice. Fools! In the mountains, there's always someone watching, if not nature herself, then those who've learned to become part of her unforgiving landscape. Nightfall finds me back at base, immersed in final preparations. I pull out old terrain surveys from the Rescue Service archives, the ones that mark all the danger zones tourists never hear about. Ancient avalanche paths, unstable cornices, crevasses masked by deceptive snow bridges. As dawn approaches on their second day, I'm already in position. The first accident is scheduled for 3 hours into their trek, at a particular bend near a ravine. I personally inspected this section yesterday. One well-placed cable is all it takes to trigger a partial path collapse. Nothing fatal, just an initial warning shot across their bow. They emerge from the morning fog, right on schedule. Jack leads, as befits a guide. Sarah brings up the rear, assisting the elderly professor. The married couples trudge between them, already showing signs of fatigue but still riding their adventure high. I wait until the entire group reaches the target zone. Jack crosses the danger point first, cocky in his expertise. The first couple follows. The second pair reaches the midpoint. Now. One sharp pull on the cable, and a section of the path crumbles away. Not much, just enough to plant the first seeds of fear. Shouts of alarm pierce the morning silence. Jack rushes back, attempting to assist the fallen hikers. No serious injuries, just bruises and shaken confidence. But the first crack in their composure has appeared, right on schedule. Just one of those things, Jack reassures the group, helping them navigate the damaged section. Mountains can be unpredictable. Main thing is to stick together. Stick together. Oh, they'll soon be clinging to each other for dear life, because the next accident awaits them just ahead, and it will make this little tumble seem like a gentle warning. After lunch, the weather deteriorates exactly as forecast. Visibility drops, wind intensifies, perfect conditions for Phase 2. I'd specifically routed them through this section, a narrow ledge where radio signals fade to static. The replacement radio already waits, hidden beneath a boulder, identical to Jack's, but with its microphone conveniently damaged. The group approaches the ledge just as fog thickens to near whiteout conditions. Jack attempts to radio base, standard procedure for checkpoint confirmation. His device spits static. That's weird. His voice carries on the wind. Everything worked fine this morning. Of course it did, until I swapped the equipment during the path collapse chaos. Now they're cut off from the outside world, with only their emergency beacon for backup. But by the time they need that, it'll be far too late. Evening finds them well behind schedule. The rock slide and communication issues have cost precious hours. Instead of reaching their planned campsite, they're forced to make camp here, on this wind-swept plateau. I observe as they struggle to pitch tents with exhausted hands. Jack tries to maintain his leadership facade, but uncertainty has crept into his voice. The snowfall begins at nightfall. From my sheltered position, I listen to icy pellets pepper my tactical tent. Tomorrow brings their most challenging section, where the trail weaves between rocky outcrops. where each step could mean disaster, where my main surprise awaits. In darkness, I check my equipment one final time. Everything must be perfect for tomorrow's performance. Ropes, carabiners, signal flare gun. Somewhere in their tent, Jack probably holds Sarah, whispering hollow reassurances. Perhaps they're even planning their future together, a future growing more uncertain with each passing hour in these mountains. Let them enjoy their last peaceful evening. Tomorrow, romance will be the last thing on their minds. Tomorrow, they'll learn the price of betraying someone who knows every deadly secret these slopes harbor. Someone who's made the mountains not just his home, but his instruments of justice. The storm intensifies through the night, driving snow and ice against the cliffs. Perfect conditions for what's coming. Every gust of wind seems to whisper accusations. Every crack of ice promises retribution. Nature itself seems eager to assist in delivering judgment. I review my plan one final time, though I've memorized every detail. The timing must be precise, the execution flawless. One mistake could turn calculated revenge into mere tragedy. But I've learned patience in these mountains. Learned to wait for the perfect moment, just as a sniper waits for the perfect shot. The night grows deeper, temperatures plummeting. Through my night vision scope, I watch their camp. The tents shudder in the wind like living things. Inside one, two shadows move closer together, seeking warmth or something more. They have no idea that every intimate moment brings them closer to their reckoning. Dawn will bring clarity, not just to the weather, but to their situation. They'll face not just the challenges of the mountain, but the consequences of their choices, and I'll be watching, guiding their fate with the same precision I once used to guide my rifle in combat. The mountain holds its secrets close, but it also reveals truth in its own time. Tomorrow, Sarah will learn who her husband really is. Not just the quiet ex-Marine she thought she knew, but the strategist who never forgave betrayal. The man who learned from these peaks that sometimes justice requires a cold heart and a steady hand. Morning approaches far too slowly for those awaiting vengeance, yet far too quickly for those about to face it. The storm shows no signs of abating. Nature herself seems to approve of my plans. Every howl of wind sounds like applause, every crack of ice like an anticipatory drum roll. In the last hours of darkness, I make my final preparations. The signal flare gun, standard rescue equipment that will serve a very different purpose today. The carefully marked map showing precisely where the snowpack is most unstable. The backup radio that will remain conveniently silent when help is most needed. Everything is in place. The stage is set. Now, all that remains is to wait for the players to take their positions. To watch as they walk willingly into the trap that nature and I have prepared together. After all, the best revenge is the kind your targets never see coming, until it's far too late to escape. The third morning stains the mountain peaks crimson. Arctic wind whips across the ridges, stirring loose snow into devil's dancers. Through my scope, I track the group breaking camp below, their movements betraying exhaustion and growing unease. The previous day's accidents have stripped away their tourist bravado, leaving raw nerves exposed to the biting cold. Base 2 Alpha Group, do you copy? The dispatcher's voice crackles through my radio, met with expected silence. Their sabotaged equipment ensures they're deaf to all warnings. Base, this is Connor. Maintaining visual on the group from observation point near Summit Pass. They're beginning their ascent, I report, my voice steady as a surgeon's hand. Acknowledged, keep eyes on them. Avalanche risk is critical in that sector. Critical indeed, especially when you know exactly where to place the charges. 3 years of mountain rescue work taught me all the tricks. Like how a well-aimed signal flare can trigger a snowslide. How to read the layers of snowpack for maximum impact. How to turn nature's fury into a precision weapon. The group starts their climb up the steep incline. Their pace has slowed considerably. Yesterday's incidents have shattered their confidence. Jack breaks trail, still playing the fearless guide. Sarah brings up the rear, now maintaining a noticeable distance from him. Between them, 4 tourists rope together like sacrificial offerings to the mountain's appetite. I adjust my binoculars, watch them tackle the first steep section. See them pause for rest, the professor's breathing visible even at this distance. Then they resume their march, and Jack makes exactly the mistake I anticipated. He chooses the shorter route, cutting across the open slope. Amateur, I whisper into the frigid air. You taught others never to cross this section after heavy snowfall. But love or lust makes even experienced guides careless. I see Sarah attempting to voice concern, probably warning him about the danger. But he dismisses her with a wave. Overconfident fool. They reach the most exposed section, just as the sun climbs high enough to begin warming the snowpack. Perfect timing, perfect position. I draw the signal flare gun, standard rescue equipment about to serve a darker purpose. The first flare arcs above the group. The red streak buries itself in the snow cornice with a sharp crack that echoes off the surrounding cliffs. I watch them freeze, startled by the sound. Jack scans the slopes, suddenly alert to danger. My second shot lands to their right. Now real fear sets in. Jack shouts something, trying to hurry the group along. Too late, my friend. Far too late. The third flare becomes their death sentence. The burning projectile strikes precisely where the snowpack is most unstable. For one heartbeat, absolute silence descends, as if the mountain itself holds its breath. Then it begins. The sound starts subtle, like paper tearing. Then builds, becoming a growl, then a roar. The snowpack releases its grip on the mountain. I watch Jack's face as understanding dawns. See Sarah's mouth open in a scream lost to the wind. Watch the tourists scramble in panic. The avalanche takes them with terrible grace. A white wall of judgment crashes down, sweeping them away like autumn leaves. They don't even have time to unclip their safety rope. The same line meant to protect them now drags them deeper into nature's fury. I wait 5 minutes for the snow dust to settle. Then key my radio, base counter here. Avalanche in Sector D7. Tourist troop caught in the slide. Emergency response needed. Copy that. Rescue team deploying. Can you locate survivors? Appears they were swept into the lower ravine, beginning descent for reconnaissance. I deliberately delay my approach. Let them marinate in their terror for a while. By the time I reached the site, they'd managed to dig themselves out. Miraculously, or perhaps unfortunately for them, no fatalities. Just bruises, mild frostbite, and shattered nerves. The avalanche played with them like a cat batting around mice before the kill. Rescue Ranger Connor. I glide down the slope on patrol skis, playing the role of the concerned professional. Status report. Everyone alive? Jack kneels in the snow, head bowed like a broken man. His guide's confidence lies buried somewhere under the avalanche debris. Sarah shivers uncontrollably, trying to help the shell-shocked tourists. I survey the scene, calculating my next move with military precision. Snowmobile can only transport 4 at a time, I announce, watching the terrified tourists. We'll need 2 trips. But Jack looks up, and I see the moment realization hits him. Finally, he understands. Civilians evacuate first. My tone brooks no argument. You and your assistant can wait for the second trip. I'm sure you have plenty to discuss. I help the tourists onto the snowmobile, making a show of careful safety checks. They're too traumatized to notice the loaded glance between Jack and me. But Sarah catches it, and something in her expression tells me she's piecing it all together. Back in a couple hours, I call over the engine's roar. Stay close together. Mountains can be so unpredictable. As the snowmobile carries the shell-shocked tourists to safety, I catch one last glimpse of the remaining pair. They stand together, yet worlds apart. Wonder what they'll discuss during these 2 hours. The magnificent mountain views, or perhaps how fate catches up with those who betray someone intimately familiar with these peaks' deadliest secrets. The ride down feels like a victory lap. Behind me, 4 grateful civilians babble about their brush with death, oblivious to the real drama unfolding. They'll never know they were just extras in a carefully orchestrated performance of vengeance. At base, I take my time with the paperwork. Let the fears sink deeper into those waiting above. The incident report reads like a masterpiece of understatement. Natural avalanche event. Group evacuation in progress. No casualties reported. The dispatcher eyes me as I sip coffee, making a show of warming up before the rescue run. Shouldn't you head back up? Weather's getting worse. Soon, I check my watch. Need to ensure the snowmobile's properly prepared. Safety first, right? 3 hours pass before I return to the accident site. They're exactly where I left them, huddled against the biting wind. Their body language speaks volumes. Sarah wrapped in her own arms, Jack pacing like a caged animal. The conversation I'd hoped they'd have is written in their postures, their averted gazes, their defeated expressions. Sorry for the delay, I killed the snowmobile's engine. Had some equipment issues to sort out. Jack helps Sarah onto the vehicle, careful now to maintain professional distance. They sit stiffly, worlds apart on the same seat. The ride down passes in silence, broken only by the engine's growl and the wind's mocking laughter. Back at base, Sarah disappears in the women's locker room without a word. Jack lingers, looking like he wants to say something. Rough day, I comment casually, storing my gear. Funny how the mountains have a way of exposing people's true nature. He opens his mouth, closes it, then simply walks away. Smart man. Some conversations are better left unspoken, especially when both parties know exactly what transpired. The official report cites multiple equipment failures, poor weather conditions, and questionable route choices as contributing factors. No mention of the carefully placed signal flares, the sabotaged radio, the precisely timed delays. The mountains keep their secrets, and those are the people who truly understand them. Sarah and I pass like ghosts in our apartment that night. She knows, I know she knows, but some truths are better left buried, like bodies under avalanche snow. They say time heals all wounds. They lie. 3 months have passed since that day in the mountains, and Sarah still wakes screaming. I hear her through the wall. We sleep in separate rooms now. Listen to her pacing the apartment in pre-dawn hours when she thinks I'm asleep. Watch her stand at the window, staring at the mountain peaks barely visible in the darkness. What does she see in those silhouettes? The avalanche consuming her lover, or her own reflection, a pale ghost of the confident woman she once was? She hasn't returned to work. What guide service would hire someone whose hands tremble at the mere sight of snow? Someone who flinches at every unexpected sound, who sees death in every snow-covered slope? Post-traumatic stress disorder, the therapist labeled it, as if giving it a name somehow explains everything. They found Jack's body a week later when the temperatures rose, or what remained of him. Official cause, mountain accident. No one dug deeper. Such tragedies happen frequently up here, especially with overconfident guides who ignore safety protocols. The case closed quickly, but something changed in my colleagues' eyes. They say nothing out loud, but I sense it. They know, or suspect. You planned it all, didn't you? Sarah said one evening when we crossed paths in the kitchen. Not a question, a statement. Her voice hollow, lifeless. Calculated every detail. I poured tea into 2 cups. Her hands shook so violently I had to help her hold the cups steady. Why? She wouldn't look at me. Why not just file for divorce? Would that have been enough? I sat across from her. Would you have run off into the sunset with him? Lived happily ever after? No, dear. Some lessons require a more permanent teaching method. She flinched, spilling tea. Hot droplets on pale skin, but she didn't even register the pain. You're a monster, she whispered. No, I shook my head. Just someone who understands the price of betrayal and knows how to exact payment. She barely speaks now. Goes through the motions of daily life like a programmed robot. Cooks meals she hardly touches. Sometimes I hear her talking to herself in empty rooms, or to Jack. Who knows what haunts the mind of someone who witnessed what she did? Her parents tried to intervene, came to visit, urged her to leave with them. She refused. Not out of love for me, out of fear. I saw it in her eyes when she hurriedly shook her head at their offer. She's afraid I'll find her. That one night, she'll hear that signal flare again, followed by the white death. Ironically, our marriage is stronger now than ever. Not through love or loyalty, through fear and understanding. She knows what I'm capable of doing to those who betray me, and I simply watch as her psyche slowly crumbles, like snow giving way beneath unwary feet. Today, I came home early from my shift. The apartment was unnaturally quiet. Found Sarah at the kitchen table, old photographs spread before her. Our happy moments in the mountains, when we were genuinely in love, or thought we were. I've been trying to remember, she said, not looking up. When did everything change? When did I decide I could play games with someone capable of such calculated cruelty? And when she remembered, I leaned against the doorframe. Nothing, she gathered the photos with trembling hands. It's all a blur. Like that date in the ravine. I keep hearing that sound. The roar of falling snow. Jack's last scream. Your calm voice on the radio. She falls silent, clutching the pictures until her knuckles turn white. You'll never let me go, will you? Her voice carries resignation, not question. Why would I? I move closer, rest my hands on her shoulders. She trembles but doesn't pull away. Where would you go? Who could understand you better than the man who made you what you are? She begins to cry, silently, hopelessly, while I stand over her, gazing out at the mountain peaks. They hold our secret, one of countless dark tales in their eternal history. They guard the memory of that day when justice was served, when a lesson was taught. And Sarah, well, she learned that lesson too well. So, while she can't live with the knowledge, can't escape it, can only exist beside the man who showed her the true price of betrayal. The mountains watch it all with ancient indifference. They've seen countless such stories play out on their slopes. They know that justice, like avalanches, follows its own natural laws, And sometimes that justice wears a rescue ranger's uniform and carries a signal flare gun, waiting for the perfect moment to unleash nature's fury on those who dare to betray their own.